Contact hours. It's I think it's an Americanism. This refers to the number of hours that you're actually with us in person.
We're with you now.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it's all arbitrary, isn't it? It's contact hours as well. I should just say when you're out with us in October. When you're with
Yeah, because I was imagining like you're gonna adjust our positions or something, like, you know, like physically, like, no, this foot like that and that foot, I don't know. Or have like one-to-one coaching, or I don't know.
So why don't you both then get into the position that we were in yesterday, semi-supine position? Have you want to have your head supported with something low. Oh, Sandra's got a full yoga kit there.
I'm very prepared.
And everything. You're a real yogi. Belt, everything.
Oh, I'll try.
Good. Okay. So the aim of this is to practice mindfulness of letting go, you could say. And at some point, I'll introduce you to the 2-to-1 breathing method this afternoon in this session. We'll do 2-to-1 breathing, which is a very, very, very simple technique of basically extending the out breath in a ratio of 2-to-1. So if you breathe in for the count of 2, then you exhale for the count of 4. If you breathe in for 3, you exhale for 6. But that's only a rough approximation. Don't feel that you've got to somehow force or labor your breathing. You don't want to do that anyway, because it just becomes very, it creates tension, which is not the point. So we'll do that in a little while. So just bringing an awareness to your body in general, a sort of an appreciative quality of awareness of the body. This doesn't mean to say that we have to like what we're experiencing. So when I say the word appreciative, what I mean is acknowledging, knowing how you are in the body. So aware of the body as it is. In this position on the floor, supported by the ground. And we're not going to give ourselves lots and lots of tasks to do here in this session. The idea is to not give ourselves lots of tasks to do. So I'm just going to give some simple instructions. And then I'll leave you just to be for at least a few minutes. You can just be with your experience, okay? So we're going to go through the different parts of the body in a particular way. And then near the end, we'll introduce a bit of breathing. And then we'll even let go of that. And we'll just be for a while without trying to do anything in particular, other than just being aware of the field of experience in general, whatever comes into your experience in general. So get a sense of the weight of your head and see if you can let go of any extraneous holding on in the face muscles, in the neck muscles. Yeah, especially around the jaw, around the eyes, and the neck. And try to get a sense of the brain as resting back, sort of as it were sinking towards the floor. So with the brain goes the senses as well. The eyes can rest towards the middle of the head. The ears can rest inwardly. The root of the tongue, soft. You can imagine the body resting on a bed of sand, for example. So you've got this somewhat sensation of sinking into the ground, into the earth. So you might just like to experiment with that sense of letting go, that image, or not. It's up to you. Now in the heart center, we're going to let the heart, so you can imagine the physical heart, or just the area of the heart, sinking towards the ground, sinking towards the back of the body. So this powerful emotional center symbolizes resting into the experience of letting go. So we're not laying any tasks on the heart at the moment. Just give the heart some time to let go of doing. So the heart sinking towards the back of the body, even into the ground. Sternum and the chest and the area of the chest resting. And the abdominal organs can follow that movement of resting back towards the floor. Letting the abdominal muscles rest as much as possible, as much as we can achieve just at this moment. Everything resting back in towards the ground. And then the pelvis and the urogenital muscles. So the perineal floor, this is the house and the home of Mula Bandha. So you can imagine as well, perhaps softening on the outside of your hips as well as in the center of the pelvis. In the groin area as well, inside of the legs. All sinking back towards the ground, towards the back of the pelvis. Now let this sense of letting go reflect down through the legs. So the big muscles of the legs, especially the thighs, also the calf muscles as well, down towards the ankles. Let go as much as possible. And then the feet spreading, sinking to the floor. So I'd like you to direct your attention gently towards the breathing and just pick up on the breath. So the breath comes more to the foreground of your experience. Even imagine that the whole body is breathing through all the different cells, different pores of the body. On the surface, as well as the deep cells, breathing in, breathing out. I invite you within that just to experiment with the 2-to-1 breathing. If you don't feel comfortable doing it, then don't worry, just breathe normally. What you're doing is extending the exhalation, gently taking your time to do that so that you're not trying to force the breath out or starve yourself of breath. And the exhalation becomes gradually longer. And you might build that up over the course of, say, 10 breaths. So just experiment with that, but don't let yourself feel starved of breath at any point. Okay, so keep it very smooth, keep it very soft. Don't lay a task on yourself, making yourself work or become uncomfortable. And after 10 cycles of doing that, then just let go and let the body breathe normally again. And whenever you like now, you can let go of that exercise of breathing and just breathe normally. Just noticing any qualitative change in your breath or in your experience. Now, in your own time, just taking your time, there's no rush. I'd like you to turn onto your right side, keep your knees bent somewhat. Just rest on your right for another 10 breaths. Okay, then I'd like you to come up now and set up for a meditation session. So just take your time. We have no rush. Get what you need, okay, to be comfortable, cushions and things. So we're going to do a session for about 20 minutes. I'm just going to guide you through. We're going to go over some things we've already done. Maybe you feel more tired. Maybe a little bit. Not the case. Yeah, I was entering into that practice myself. Well, luckily, I had a little nap before I came into the session this afternoon, so I'm not tired. But sometimes you get this when you do that kind of practice, and if you do it a little bit longer, you can find that as you come out, you feel a little bit groggy, and then quite quickly you regain your energy. You can sort of bounce back. So that's a sign of good relaxation practice. It doesn't have to be that long. So we're going to go over again the practice of the senses, and we're going to do a practice called staying at the base. So I'll guide you through this. It's not that difficult conceptually or in terms of practice, but I'll guide you through it, through the practice itself. Okay. So just becoming aware again of the posture, this shift of posture into sitting, the space you're occupying and the space that is surrounding you. So we're just encouraging ourselves here to come into a space of practice. Okay, this is all invitation. So we're free to do it or free not to do it. I'm just here to encourage you to be interested in the practice and to develop your own connection to the practice. It's like this image of the horse on a lead. So we're training a horse. Sometimes training our mind is a bit like training a wild horse. It needs a lot of space to run around in to start with. So if we just try and too quickly jump on the back of the beast, then we get a reaction. We get this abreaction internally where we start to not want to do it. So actually by combining the joy of the present moment with the breath, often this helps us to come into the present moment. Although it's not just one moment, it's just a continuation of one moment to the next moment, to the next moment. We're sort of staying with the flow of moments. So just becoming aware of the field of awareness of your body, whatever that means to you, whatever that feels like, remembering that there are different ways to become aware of the body. Through the physical sense of the body in its place, through the energetic field of the body. Breath body, so different ways of relating to our body. And at the very least, we just know that we're in this position, where we just know directly that we're here, sitting here. And there's a comprehension of that, we just know. There's no need to think about it. We just know we're here. So I'd like you to become aware of the sensation of the eyes. So just noticing whatever the eyes are detecting by way of light, whatever comes into the field of awareness of sight. And just noticing exactly what appears, not trying to think it through anyway. And now shift your attention to noticing hearing, what you're hearing. Or just try to stay with a very basic experience of hearing. Try not to involve yourself in the objects that are causing the sound. So we start thinking about what we're hearing. Just try to stay with the actual basic sensation of sound as it comes into the ear. So now just noticing the sense of taste and smell. Whatever is there or not there. Now we're going to broaden out our field of awareness to include the tactile sensations in the body, most obvious sensations in the body, and just take your focus to a particular area where the sensations are most obvious. And what's sensation like? How does it behave? I'd like you to take your awareness, so to speak, further inwards. And I'd like you to shine your attention onto your mood, general background mood that you're experiencing. And the sense of the mind itself. So that can be open. The mind can feel more closed and restricted. It can feel open and expansive. It can feel relaxed. Again, the sense of appreciation is just acknowledging what actually is there in experience. And within your background mood, does there seem to be any particular emotion feeding that mood? If so, where do you experience it? What's it like to experience emotion? Does it help to just label it softly in your own mind? Is that not necessary? And then expanding out a little bit further still, noticing if there are any thoughts in the mix of your experience, either mixing with emotions, feeding off the emotions, any train of thought that you can identify. So when you try to become aware of thoughts, what actually happens? Okay, now let's broaden out our awareness to take in the whole field of experience. So whatever arises into your experience, you become aware of, you just notice that. Recognize, acknowledge, let go. It's going to move on anyway. And it's all okay. Whatever it is, there's a sense that it's just okay to have this experience, whatever it is. In this practice, we're not looking for some other kind of experience, better or worse or different. Okay, now just feel free in your own time to let go. Just rest your mind, rest your body. Okay, so within that practice, which seems so simple on the one hand, but when you start to look at what's going on, there's quite a complexity to it. I'd be interested to hear, well, how you found shifting from the more sense-based experience in the body to the mind. So there's a shift that takes place there, at least on some level. There's a shift that takes place between what we experience as the senses, as if things coming from outside, and the body is external, and the mind. Any comments to be made there? Observations?
I fell asleep a few times, which I hate when I'm sitting up. It's like dozing off. But when it came to them, I wake up really fast because otherwise I would have fallen down. But when it came to the mind, it was interesting because for me, it was a lot of images also from like some TV series I've been watching now. And it's like there's so much going on in my mind. It's like a full blown, like, I don't know, there's a movie there and there's things there. And it's like, yeah.
And what's the background feeling to all of that activity going on? Did you notice some other sort of response to it, as I don't want this?
Actually it goes back to the thing we did when we did the relaxation. It was really strange because when we did the stomach thing, I don't think I ever do that. There was so much anxiety there, like when the stomach and the intestines relax down. I got these kind of old shame things, like I invited people to a barbecue and I did it in the wrong way many years, 2018, and nobody and these kind of old things that just came up, and it's feeling shame and these kind of really old things that are seemingly small, not big stuff, not the big dramas in life, but really small stuff. So I thought that was interesting. But in the mind, it was more things I've watched, or so I don't know if it was connected with my mood or not. I think sometimes my mind is also just trash from things I've seen or impressions I've got, and they're on repeat. It doesn't always feel meaningful for me.
Yeah.
It's more like images I've seen, and then it's just a movie playing there, and then thoughts there and emotion there. There's I don't know if that everyone's mine or just mine, but
it's just yours. Mine's yeah, I can relate to that. That's mind. That's what mind is like that a lot of the time. What about Sandra? You're muted, Sandra. You're muted.
Oh, sorry, I thought I was off mute.
I've done that myself once or twice.
Yeah, I think I was fairly relaxed. Don't know if that's because we did the relaxation first, so that sort of helps me be more relaxed than what I normally would be when I do meditation. So I was going through all the senses, and I was trying to concentrate, visually, then hearing. I mean, visually, I could see a sun coming through, but also some darkness as well, because I'm a very sort of visual person. Here, I couldn't hear anything. Even though normally there's people that walk past, or I could hear cars, or there was nothing. There was no sound, and it was just I don't know how to describe it really. I suppose echoes in the room. It was no sort of direct sound as such. To smell, I couldn't smell anything. So yes, I was going through all the senses. I was sort of concentrating on doing that, and then after that, I think I started to get more into my head again, and I was thinking about my son again. He was, I mean, he's in my thoughts quite a lot, even though he's not always with me. If I don't see him, then he's constantly ringing me throughout the whole day, So it's always there, but it wasn't too overwhelming like how it normally is. And sometimes if I do meditation, I can feel it more in my gut, this area. When my stomach's going over a bit. But I didn't have that. I didn't have that today, and I don't know if that's because we did the relaxation, whether that helped to sort of not to make the meditation so intense, maybe.
Yeah. So that what you're describing there in terms of the solar plexus, that's a more emotional response to whatever thought process is going on, presumably. Is that what you mean? That
Yes.
It's sort of a visceral experience because of whatever it represents.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Is there any because we both had this with the solar plexus? Is there any meaning to that, or any? Why is that? That so much emotions go there, and
yeah, there'll be lots of different reasons. I don't think it's a question of there being one cause. You just speak. I mean, the exercise in a way is just highlighting whatever's going on, regardless of the content. It's just highlighting. Well, so I'm just going to still on noise going on here. Just highlighting whatever's going on. Okay, so the purposes of the practice is not to try and at least at this stage, at this level, not try and interpret our experience. You know, sometimes we get into interpreting dreams. It's kind of the same thing that we do with our nightlife. We try and interpret it. In some ways, it's more interesting to stay in touch with the felt sense of the experience. And I sometimes say this about dreams. I think it's better to stay with the sense of the dream. What actually did you feel in relation to the dream itself, rather than interpreting the images? Because the images might be completely random. They might not. It might be significant. It might not. I like a lot of our daily mental activity. I think a lot of it is just a reflection of whatever's going on. It's just conditioned by whatever's going on. And then when you sit still for long enough and you just look inwards, you can see the echoes of whatever's happening in your life that you're connecting to. So I think it's more a question of, like, the practice we're doing is actually really demanding. It's demanding to stay with experience, and sometimes it's demanding to be clear about what experience is going on, because there's so many different factors influencing it. And sometimes experience can be so fast moving, it's very difficult to kind of sense. You can just get a general sense of what's going on in yourself sometimes, can't you? And other times it's much more specific and clear, but sometimes it's very diffuse. And we're not trying to kind of evaluate it from that point of view. It doesn't really matter whether it's diffuse or whether it's very specific, whether it seems to be somewhere in the body. We just want to recognize it, have some acknowledgement and sense of what's happening. And Sandra, are you familiar with the Wheel of Life image? Have you come across that?
I have come across it, but this was some time ago. Yeah, I have come across that.
So I think, Joanne, you're going to be a lot more familiar with that image, aren't you? The Wheel of Life. Do you remember the Wheel of Life? Yeah. So I'm just going to turn to that for a minute, because I want to use it as part of what we're talking about here before we go into the next stage. I was trying to find a really good image of the Wheel of Life, and it was difficult to find one. So I've got this Indo-Tibetan thing. Oh, that's a bit of a way off, isn't it? Indo-Tibetan thing. Just open it up and share it properly. Have you seen this before, Sandra?
I've seen something similar to this before. Yeah.
So it's not a terribly good copy, and it's very, very Indo-Tibetan in its style. We haven't really got a good Western equivalent yet. Anyway, this image is really important. As a set of symbols, we could be here for a month exploring this, and we wouldn't exhaust it. So this is sometimes spoken about in Buddhism as us. We're looking into a mirror. And this is representing how we work, how the mind works. So it's obviously symbolic. I'm not going to go through all of this now, because this is a completely separate course to go through all of this. But what I wanted to highlight is just one aspect of this. This outer rim is known as the Nidana chain. Okay, so these 12 links around here are what's known as one representation of human life as it unfolds. Yeah. So you can take it in different ways. You can take it on the level of, if you're talking about it from a Buddhist perspective, traditionally it's past life, present life, future life, and how our mind is conditioned through a series of lives. But we're not going to get into that now. Really what I wanted to look at was just the few links here that represent. So they're a bit graphic. So these three links here are sometimes known as contact, feeling, and craving. Contact, feeling, and craving. So contact represented by the couple here. And then you've got feeling represented by what usually is represented as an arrow in the eye. It's a very graphic image, very Indo-Tibetan sort of image. So you've got a couple embracing, then you've got someone with an arrow in their eye, which represents feeling in the sense that we've been talking about it. That's pleasant, unpleasant, neutral. And then you've got what leads on from that, which is referred to as trishna. So that's the traditional word is trishna. So it's craving, thirst, or aversion, which is the opposite. So on the basis of contact, so contact means anything that comes into relationship with one of our senses: smell, touch, taste, eye contact, has an effect. It has a conditioning effect on us directly. So do our thoughts. Our thoughts also condition our experience, and so do our emotions. So we are nothing more than, in a way, this constant process of change based upon conditions. That's what our experience is. So based upon contact, whatever you come into contact with, it's going to have an effect that leads to feeling. What's important to know about this is that feeling, as pleasant or unpleasant feeling arises in us, we can do nothing about that. That's an absolutely conditioned process that we cannot, in the moment, change. We just have to open up to it and experience it. But it determines what comes next, which is how we respond to that feeling. We either respond in terms of pushing it away because we don't like it because it's unpleasant, or we grab onto it and try and appropriate it because it's pleasant and it gives us a sense of fulfillment. Yeah. So we're becoming mindful of that process in the process of the 4 foundations of mindfulness. We're becoming more and more familiar with this mechanism here of how contact leads to a feeling, which leads to a reaction. And that's ongoing, all the time. And it's no easy thing to transform this. I don't want to give the impression at all that this is somehow, once you've understood this intellectually, that's it, you've got it sorted. No, it's really, really deeply rooted in us. In fact, it's what we are. We're basically driven by these processes. So by the fact that we can't not come into contact with things because we're human beings with senses. We have skin that feels hot and cold. We have eyes that see, a mouth that tastes, ears that hear, etc., etc. And we can't block those things out. You can block those. You can try and reduce contact with certain things to influence the conditions of feeling. To some extent, you can, and to some extent, that's even recommendable. So, just to give an example, like 2 or 3 hours on social media can leave you feeling really alienated, and like it's like you're lacking something. It's promised you so much, and it's given you so little. It's like, so you're left with this kind of yearning somehow for something. So we've allowed ourselves to be open to that kind of experience. We've come into contact with it, and it's given rise to feeling, which is often unpleasant, or a mix of pleasant and unpleasant. And then we're having an emotional reaction to it in terms of either pushing it away because it seems awful, we don't want to know that, or we've liked something and so we're trying to pull it into ourselves. Either way, the whole thing's a mess. In a certain kind of way, it becomes quite messy quite quickly. So we're being pushed around by these processes within us quite a lot. And one thing that meditation does, just general meditation, let alone this particular practice that we're doing, is it begins to bring perspective and space into all of that. So we're trying to create some space in between our thoughts so we can see them more, trying to create some space between the feelings and the emotions, so meditation is a process of gradually creating more space around our experience so that we're not so subsumed and consumed by it, which is normally what happens. We get consumed by our experience. We become it. We become the contact. We become the feeling. And then we become the reaction. It's like somehow we narrow down and just enter into that world. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I'm trying to put the mindfulness practice in a bit of perspective because it helps to understand more the background as to why we're doing what we're doing. And you could say an awful lot more about all of this. These are sort of different realms that we inhabit, which again can be seen as symbolic, or you can just look at one day in your own life. You can see that sometimes you're inhabiting the more human realm, which is a mixture of pleasure and pain. That's the typical human realm definition, mixture of pleasure and pain in equal measure. And then you've got the Deva realm, which is where you're in a high, in a pleasurable space. Everything's going hunky-dory, but of course that changes. And you've got the Ashra realm, which represents the combative and competitive tendencies in us to get after something, to do better, all that kind of pushing and pulling. And you've got the hungry ghost realm, which represents never being satisfied, like you've got a constant thirst and you can't fill it. And I think nowadays, social media, kind of demonizing it a little bit, but it's sort of set up that way. And I think we know that. I think we've got enough discriminating awareness as adults to sort of see that's what's going on. It sets up a constant thirst in us for something. Yeah. So that's what that represents. And I'm just briefly going through this for the sake of completion. And then you've got the animal realm, which is very, very instinctual. That's just concerned with food, shelter, getting enough basics so that we feel kind of secure. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So according to Buddhist tradition, like we're in the most advantageous position is to be in the human realm. So if we take ourselves as being human beings, we've got the the best potential, best possibilities there to grow and develop and utilize our intelligence and our awareness to grow and change. So it's important to become familiar, therefore, with what's impinging upon your senses throughout the day, how that influences you, and become more familiar with the feeling tone it can leave. So often, it's like because these things are so deeply ingrained, it's very, very difficult sometimes to recognize it for what it is and then do something about it. And it can feel like we're kind of victims to our own experience. I sometimes get into that days when I just can't be bothered, I think I just can't be bothered today to be mindful that much. And that's just resistance. That's my habitual resistance to, I know what's good for me, as St. Paul said, but I don't do it. I do the opposite. So it's like recognizing that, okay, even that can come into awareness. Even that resistance can come into mindfulness. Mindfulness doesn't reject anything. So at least to become aware of it is fine. Just to notice that, I'm feeling resistant. I don't feel like meditating. At least recognizing that is a really powerful practice in itself. And the awareness itself can dissolve the resistance. It can dissolve all the beginning of the stories that are going to arise that we tell ourselves. They can be harmful, sometimes destructive. So this is a really profound image, and it's well worth contemplating, looking at and contemplating and understanding it, because it's giving us a very direct insight into how we function as human beings and how we can transform our situation as well. So mindfulness is really about transformation. So I really just wanted to point that out for now, those three links: contact, feeling, and then what comes after that, depending upon your particular type of makeup. You'll either experience more of the aversion, don't want that, that's unpleasant, or you'll experience more, yeah, good, more chocolate cake. As if, you can only eat so much chocolate cake, can't you, before you start feeling nauseous. So even the satisfying, pleasant things can turn into unpleasant things. Right, let's just stop that for a moment. So this will become relevant shortly in what we're going to do, I hope. Oh, look at that, it's already 6 minutes past. So what do you think? Can you relate to that?
Yeah.
Can you relate to being a being that has contact and then feeling and then one or the other? Or is it just me?
No, I can relate to a lot of it, actually. I can relate to resistance. I can relate to that. I can relate, well, to chocolate. When I'm under a lot of stress, I turn to chocolate and to ice cream. And at that time, I'm really enjoying it. But like what you're saying, after you start feeling sick, and then you think, oh, why did I do that? I'm not going to do it again. But then again, I will do it if I start feeling stressed, So I could relate. I could relate to that. And I think also, like a lot of things that we do, I mean, we are, our conditioning plays a big part, doesn't it, in how we think and how we feel. So I think there's probably a lot of influences, probably from my own parents, that affect the way sometimes I think and feel. And I think sometimes I try and maybe rebel against it, So yeah. But I would like to learn. I mean, when I've been to the Buddhist Centre, I know Surya Gupta, who's the chair. She did something on the wheel of life, but it was, I mean, she didn't go into great detail because, as you say, it takes a long, you'd have to spend a lot of time if you want to go deeply, to find out more about it. But I was intrigued by it and I was very interested. So are we going to be doing that? Are we going to be looking at on a deeper level about the wheel of life? Is that part of the course?
Not on this course, not really, because it does take us much more into Buddhist theory and all of that. So we're not really going to go into that. It's just, but you can easily pick up on that in the Buddhist Center if you're interested, Sandra. They're often, it's a very typical course because it's such an important image and symbol.
Yeah.
So at the same time, it's not unrelated to what we're doing. And if we had more time and space, we might bring it in and sort of, so that it provides a bit of a backdrop. However, I think that the four foundations, in some ways, they're fairly explicit, and with a bit of practice and time, you can start to see how they connect. So in some ways, you'll discover this through your practice anyway. You'll discover what's going on just by observing and noticing. As you've already described, you get stressed. There's enough of an unpleasant experience going on for you to look for the opposite. So unpleasant sensation often propels us to look for pleasant. Because that we're wired to enjoy and have pleasure, and we need pleasure as human beings. That's really important.
That's one question I have, because I'm also like been examining like codependency the last couple of years, and for me, I don't know if pain is pleasure from here. I don't feel that maybe it's like something you recognize, but I don't feel like the pleasure type at all. I want to be more like the pleasure type. But I don't feel, on the other hand, that I'm pushing things away either, like pushing negative things away. But how do that fit into the real? Like that kind of, it's kind of, I don't know, some kind of sense of duty, but also some kind of recognition and safety. Like it is some kind of, not pleasure, I don't know if it's English that confuses me, but I wouldn't say it's pleasure, but maybe it's like some kind of easier to do what you know how to do. And some kind of values driving you, but maybe sometimes, And also I do think when it comes to Buddhist teachings, because I've mainly been in female, I think it's different when women teach it from men. It's what I noticed. Because I think women and men are conditioned differently. And many times I hear men saying we need to do more for others and we need to think about not only ourselves and these kind of things. But when I hear women teaching, and what I feel as a woman is more like we need to learn how to also acknowledge our own needs. And I do think that there's a need for different teachings. And I think it's what I sometimes miss is that we're not as mindful of that difference. It's not that I really believe in feminism and equality, but I do think when we're teaching Buddhism, I've seen female friends like, oh, should I do even more? Should I be even more caring about others and have even less joy and even less time? Like, and I do think like, and I was like explaining to my friend, well, no, he's living in a men's collective and he puts and she was like having her ex living with her, taking care of that and her kids. And, she didn't have any time for herself except for that night she went to the center. So it's like the framing of things is sometimes so different, I feel.
Yeah, no doubt there are different perspectives being communicated. However, I think when it comes to our direct experience, we can all recognize more or less this process that's going on. In terms of, the wheel of life is just talking to the mind, the human mind itself, in terms of contact, feeling, craving, aversion. I don't think there'll be different ways in which we perceive those things, but the process I think will be pretty similar. And without going into other areas of debate about how the Dharma gets communicated, we need to take care of ourselves. I think, Joanna, that's really important. We need to take care of ourselves, and I think we're taking care of ourselves by doing this. By practicing mindfulness, you are taking care of yourself. You're setting up the conditions for the long-term, immediate to some extent, but long-term real care of yourself. You're really going to take care of yourself because by understanding yourself, you'll know what you need to do to be well, by being mindful, you'll know what you need to do, what's most appropriate in every situation. And giving more or giving less, nourishing yourself, or, when it's right to do the right thing. Mindfulness, I think, trains us in that.
But I also think that, like, going into like the caring about others that many women do, that is also some kind of like the hungry ghost world somehow.
It could be. I mean, it's a general statement, but I don't know. It could be for some people.
Not always, but I do think that sometimes getting caught up in that is, but I have to think about it.
Yeah, it's a really interesting area. I think it's an area that creates quite a lot of dilemma for a lot of people, how to act in relation to others, oneself. But I think it depends. It's going to be different for everybody as to how to respond to that. I wouldn't like to generalize, because I think there are men that are dealing with the same questions, perhaps from a more female perspective as well. I don't think it's just...
Yeah, you can't talk about the individual level. It's just like how we condition the different genders to different expectations in our society, and those expectations are different. From other, it doesn't matter almost if, from societal level. I think it's we can't see it as neutral, because I think that's not how it is. Even though it's not true for everyone, like all the experiences, I find that it's good to at least put that question out there, so you don't feel that you have to live up to even more pressure on being something when you're conditioned so differently from the beginning. Like I've seen a lot of like progress in women, like being more angry or taking more place, or like not looking happy, for example, not smiling, like in retreats, when you see all female retreats and women like take off all that, like just being serene, or just being like not smiling, not It's interesting to explore. And that's what I really appreciate with the Sangha, having male and female also separated, because it's difficult to explore with together.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that a part of this teaching involves mindfulness of self and mindfulness of other, being aware of oneself and aware of others and what they're experiencing. And sometimes that's really hard to know, because it's easy to interpret what you think someone else is experiencing without really knowing what's going on in them. And actually, sometimes people don't even articulate particularly well what's going on in themselves. So it's like, it's doubly difficult, But it is an aspect of mindfulness practice, actually, is to sense and get a sense of someone's mood, get a sense of someone's state of mind. Practice can take you in that direction. And then, but I mean, in a way, this has taken us a little bit off from the subject of today, a little bit off. I mean, it's an interesting area, but I'm kind of, if we go too much down that rabbit hole, we're going to end up not doing what I sort of planned to do today. And I think our conditionings are very different. I'm aware of that. I'm aware that my conditioning as a man is different from that, which is, just generalizing, different from a woman. And I'm aware that different things come up in different contexts. That's why we have male contexts and female contexts, because we respond. It's not that the teachings are different. It's just that the applications of them might be different for us to some extent. The teachings are the same. We have the mind. We all have suffering. We have the causes of suffering. And then we have this path, apparently, this path that can lead us out of it, which involves, to a large extent, it involves being aware. Much of it is about developing different facets of awareness, And yet within that, we all have to acknowledge our own conditioning. And the conditioning we have is quite complex. So it's, in a sense, without getting into trying to analyze our background, it's just looking at the present experience we're having and knowing that the present experience is what counts, because it's that how we respond to that present experience is what's going to condition our future. And it's us that's conditioning that future. Yeah. So with So I'm just pausing because I'm trying to work out what to do with the last 10 minutes. I haven't really got time to unfold another theme. But I can do that tomorrow. That's okay. But I must do it first thing tomorrow. So we'll look at that. Actually, it'd be better to do this tomorrow because Emma will be here in person. So I quite like Emma to be around for this. Why don't we do another little practice? I think that's what we do. So we'll finish with another meditation. And we'll pick up on the other stuff tomorrow. Yeah.
Should we sit up or lay down?
Yeah, if you can take a sitting posture, that would be great. Breath. So what we're going to do is just going to walk through the Satipatthanas. We'll just go through them all one by one. Just dwell in them for a little bit. So just opening up to the field of your experience. First of all, the body. Just resting into the experience of the body as you find it. So we don't have to lay a big task on ourselves in becoming aware of the body. The body is something that we can quite easily become aware of in the ways that we've looked at, in a sense of the body being in this position, in this posture. So keeping the spine gently, but not forcefully upright, and the neck relaxed and the head relaxed. And you broaden your experience out more I'd like you to become aware of any obvious pleasant sensation, anything in your experience that's pleasant. It could be something very, very simple, like the face just opening a bit more, just relaxing a bit more. Now within the field of your awareness, again, noticing anything that seems unpleasant to you. It could be something associated with the mind and thoughts, or it could be something in the body. Bring in an appreciative awareness to our experience. We're not here to evaluate it or judge it. We just want a clear, straightforward sense of knowing what's going on. And then now seeing if you can identify anything that seems like it's a neutral feeling. It means neither strongly pleasant nor strongly unpleasant. So just looking into the heart and mind, noticing, is there anything that seems to you as a feeling that's neutral? So I'd like to encourage you to move towards your mind, just opening your field of awareness to include whatever's going on for you on the level of emotions or thoughts. Just noticing where those thoughts are moving towards, what kind of emotions you're experiencing, where in the body. Does it seem to be moving, all of it, or does it seem static? And I'd like to encourage you to just open up broadly the whole field of experience. We're just letting it in, we're knowing what it is, whatever it is, and just let it go on its way. If that seems to create some sense of feeling lost, just opening up to general experience, just come back to your breath. Let yourself anchor down again into your breath and your body. So if the thoughts are running away with us, taking us away, just drop down into the belly, drop down into the pelvis. Just have a sense of grounding and rooting. Breathing one breath after the other. And now just for the last short bit of the session, we're going to just sit, let go of the effort, trying to meditate in any way. Just resting the mind, resting your body, resting the heart. Okay. So thank you to you both for your input. I'm going to leave the session there for now. We'll come back again at 8, and as always, we'll do a session of metta. Either of you fancy bringing a poem? Something uplifting? You're muted. Both of you muted.
Yes, okay, I'll bring one this evening.
Yeah, okay, great. Good. That's good. Look forward to that. Okay, so we'll meet again, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, and we'll do that. And just a question of, do you have a copy of Living with Awareness? Imagine that's something you've already read in the past, Joanna.
No, I don't think I have.
No? So be good to get yourself a copy of that, because that's one of our course books. And it would be good to start reading it now, because now until the end of the course, because it very much fleshes out what we're talking about. It's a commentary by Sangharakshita on the sutta that we're working with here. So you should be able to pick one up in the Buddhist Center, I think, Sandra. It's not a very expensive book, because it's quite a small book.
Yeah.
But it's a really important book, because it puts the whole practice into perspective much more broadly. And in the 2 weeks when we're together, we also go through that. We devote a morning to just going over some of the main points. So there's that one. There's
also talks on the Free Buddhist Audio on that. Is that one of the that's transmit?
There might be some talk. There probably are talks on the subject, but not as far as I'm aware, by Sangharakshita. So the book is spoken word project. So in other words, it's more readable than some of his other stuff. There's probably a copy of it. I know you don't need it, but it's probably a copy in Swedish. I'd be surprised if it hasn't been translated. Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I think so. I got this other one on Swedish. The
Buddhist
loving kindness one.
Oh, okay. You got that in Swedish. So I imagine the other. Well, you probably don't need it, but it is. I'd be surprised if those two books weren't translated into Swedish.
Yeah, I got the other one in English.
Okay. Just because it's, I know you're a very, very capable English speaker, but it's probably something about connecting to the language through your mother tongue.
I do notice that. I do struggle with English, although I read a lot of English. It is different, but sometimes I think English is better because you have more words.
Oh, okay.
So there's more nuance, I guess, in English than in Swedish.
You would know. Anyway, so yeah, do think about getting a copy of that one, Sandra, and the Living with Kindness as well, because that also forms a background reading for the course. And they go together, they're sort of like companion books, those two. Okay.
So the theme is living.
Sorry?
The theme is living. Next theme we will.
Living.
Next follow-up course is like the Tibetan Book of Dying.
Oh, I'd love to study that. That would be a great thing to do.
Living and dying. Yeah, I have it here, but I've never read it.
It's a huge study, that one. It's very, very, very rich.
Like this thick. So we're lucky.
Oh, the Living and Dying by Sogyal Rinpoche, that one.
Yeah.
That was the first book I ever read on anything Buddhist.
What? You started with that one?
The first book I read, yeah. Probably about 35 years ago, I think. Yeah.
You need good eyes because the text is so small. I need my glasses for this.